Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. This is NS episode 3. I am Abram Buhner, but I'm not your host. I'm also not even on this podcast episode. It's very late at night, irregular location. A very quick intro to this video because sadly, this is the only actual video you're going to see. After my little bit here, you're just going to see Tucker's very, very, very good thumbnail for this episode. Be sure to give him props in the comments. He's very proud of this one. But unfortunately, something went wrong. We don't really know what. Squadcast seems to have messed up somehow because not me, not Tucker, not Bo could get the video to export. Different errors all around. Trust me, we have tried. I've got the logs to prove it. You can come and try to say, oh, Abram, you could have tried this, you could have tried that. I promise if you had text messages, you wouldn't say that any longer. But I'm not going to delay things any further. Enjoy this episode of NS. Sorry, I guess. I don't even really feel like I need to apologize because I did the best I could. So did Tucker, so did Bo. And Bo's on this episode, so I don't know what else to say. Okay, enjoy. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the Nintendo Select Podcast, a weekly Nintendo Switch retrospective and nostalgia podcast where we talk about our favorite Nintendo Switch memories. Hosted by me, Tucker Hazel.
And me, Charlie Wackles.
This week we'll be diving deep into third-party games on Switch, talking about the variety of collections and remasters available, how Nintendo improved third-party support after the Wii U, and talking about the games we're surprised never made it to Switch. For this episode, we have the very first guest here on the Nintendo Select Podcast, and that is Mr. Bo Talks Games. That is his God-given legal Christian name. And I'm excited to have him on this show for one particular reason. Not only because he's my friend, when I talk about Nintendo, he has a lot of thoughts about this topic, but because he and I did Nintendo Select together a year ago in a very different form, but he had to be the first guest on this show because technically this was his idea, kind of, in a backwards way. Welcome, Bo. First ever guest, how do you feel? Are you honored? On the level of 1 to 100, how honored do you feel?
At least like a 90.
Holy
dang. I'm not gonna go all the way.
But,
yeah. No, thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, Tucker and I did a similar podcast titled Nintendo Select last year over on my channel, Bo Talks Games. But that was more news focused. Yeah. We also went really long every episode. We're just talking about random stuff.
Yes.
But this is really cool because this is more about retrospective and remembering Nintendo moments in history. And I know that's what you wanted to do with that original form of the podcast a little bit more than I did, I think.
Yeah.
So this is the best of both worlds. Now I can come on and be a guest whenever, but also you get your full retrospective podcast. So
yeah, and it's also on a channel where long form content doesn't kill the views because we had to stop doing NS after 4 months. I think we got 15 or 16 episodes because you do 10-minute videos on your channel and we're uploading 4.5 hour long videos, and the algorithm was like, what are you doing? No, I'm not suggesting this to anyone.
Yeah, it also made it weird because there was redundancies with what we were talking about in the podcast versus what I was uploading. So I would honestly say the podcast is doing pretty well, but it was just hurting the other content too much. But it was a lot of fun doing it, and I'm happy to be here.
Now, Charlie, I don't think you've ever talked to Bo before, so this is your formal introduction.
I mean, we followed each other on Twitter 2 weeks ago, maybe, and that's about it. So Bo, I guess for the audience and for myself, tell me a little bit about your YouTube channel and some of your kind of approach to content creation.
Yeah, I've been doing YouTube since I was 14. 20,
Good God.
About to be 24. So I've been doing it for almost 10 years, coming up, and I think in October. I just like talking about Nintendo. I love, and really games as a whole, but I do focus on Nintendo and, some Square Enix where I can fit it in there. That's been a bigger thing for me recently, reviewing old Final Fantasy games and Dragon Quest XI and stuff, because I've been going back and playing those. But I just love covering Nintendo news. I think it's really interesting kind of figuring out the inner workings of these companies, and it's just, I don't know, something about Nintendo, man. Yeah. There's something about them. I have a PS5. I sold my Series X. I was just telling Tucker about that.
Yikes.
But there's something about Nintendo. They have a special sauce that for some reason I just really, really attached to.
Yeah.
And I just love talking about them.
Well, and on top of that, your channel was not primarily, in terms of how popular it got, was not primarily driven by talking about Nintendo. It was about showing how many god darn Nintendo games you own. You were primarily a collecting channel for a while, and that's where
wall of red behind you there, Bo.
Yeah,
that is a lot of Switch.
Well, do you know how many Switch games you own?
It's over 500.
Oh my!
I know it's over 500.
God.
That's almost a
It
Dragon
started
Ball
with
meme.
3DS though.
It's almost
That
a
is
Dragon
almost a
Ball
Dragon Ball meme. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. But yeah, it started with 3DS. When they announced the eShop was closing, that's when my channel really took off, and I was like, oh, you should look into these 3DS games before they get super expensive.
Yeah.
I might have accidentally inflicted a little bit of FOMO on the resale market
Yeah.
for 3DS. I apologize,
Certainly possible.
but the channel really took off there, and from then I've really focused more on news, and
Yeah.
I do like a monthly collection update, but that's definitely not the
Yeah.
focus.
You also have almost a complete Wii U collection, correct?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's off screen. It's over there. It's over there somewhere. I'm missing I think 15 games across all regions. It's mostly Japanese
Wait, across
stuff.
all regions? I thought it was just a North American thing. Wait, did you
There's not that many exclusives. There's not that many regional
okay,
exclusives.
sure.
That's wild.
Oh, and by the way,
that's sick as hell.
Charlie, when he says that, he means that like he owns all the versions of Dragon Quest X on Wii U, and there's like 6 of them. Like he's going deep.
I'm trying to go. Those are hard to find. Some of them just don't pop up on the internet.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
But he's hardcore, and we are having him on this podcast today to talk about the Nintendo Switch, which is a system all three of us love, and both might even be more invested in Switch than Charlie and I. But talking about third-party games on Switch, the last 2 episodes that we've done, we've focused a lot on Nintendo's games that they brought to Switch. But today we're going to be talking about third-party games, which is everything not from Nintendo, but I think that not made by Nintendo, but I think that primarily we're going to be talking about like big games on Switch, because third-party games on Nintendo systems have been pretty hit or miss over the course of their history, and Switch has definitely started recapturing a lot of that magic, not only because it's a very popular console and people want to put their games on it, but because Nintendo made sure that that was something that was bringing people into the system. They made the hardware something that was easy to develop for. They put out a lot of dev kits to all the big third parties, and so third party support has been really, really good on Switch. And I'm sure it'll only get better on Switch too. But where do we want to start, guys? Talking about third party games on Switch.
I mean, I feel like the best place to start is just kind of like the Switch came out with a bang, right? I mean, when we first saw what the Switch was, we saw more third party things than first party things. It felt like. I mean, in that first reveal trailer, there was NBA 2K and Skyrim, and like, yeah, there was Zelda, and that was kind of the big focus. But I feel like coming out of that presentation, it was Zelda on Switch, then it was Mario on Switch, and then the next big story was Skyrim and 2K.
Yeah.
Like that was really big news, especially after the extremely dry Wii U era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's interesting about third-party support ending Wii U and going into Switch is that if we were doing this kind of podcast at the beginning of Wii U, we'd be like, Nintendo, you're doing great. You're reaching out to all these teams. You're getting third-party support. You got your Call of Duty. You got Tekken. You got Watch Dogs. You got Assassin's Creed. I mean, they really had a lot of people on their side at the launch of Wii U. But that maybe lasted
Not a day
18
past
months.
that. Not a day past launch.
Which is really, really interesting that I think for Switch, almost it's kind of been reversed in terms of a lot more teams have gotten on board with Switch as the years have gone on. And primarily, and I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is through remasters, collections, ports of old games. The Switch has become, I think now only second only to Steam Deck, the place where you can play the most of games history on the go. And that's one of the reasons I love Switch, is just how much of the library of games history is available on this system. And a lot of that is third-party stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think another thing about that is like the consistency with which we see third party games. Like we kind of expect at this point at every single Nintendo Direct some kind of big third party review, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that has been so crucial to the Switch's success in the mainstream outside of the draw of Animal Crossing and Mario Kart and Smash Brothers.
Yeah, I do think it's skewed a lot closer to Japanese support in the later years, though. But that first year, like you were talking, Charlie, about Skyrim, my 16-year-old brain couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
I was like, Skyrim? After the Wii U? I lived through the Wii U. I was a Wii U owner.
Yeah.
So seeing Skyrim on a Nintendo platform, specifically the idea that Bethesda was supporting Nintendo. Because I don't think, had we ever really seen a Bethesda game on a Nintendo platform? I don't think so.
Well,
If we have, it's been decades.
Yeah, because I mean,
Right.
you can think of like...
like back in the day, we had like id doing Doom 164.
but it was not
But even that
owned
wasn't
by
Bethesda.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
And yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, they would have been doing Skyrim, the Wolfenstein New Order, Fallout 3, that the Oblivion definitely wasn't on Nintendo systems, and so I think that was a really good sign, especially because they knew that it was going to be a big deal. Not only that that Bethesda games were going to be on Nintendo systems, but they were going to be on a handheld system, which had basically not happened ever up to that point. And I would say that Bethesda was the first one to really get in and support Switch. You were talking about Skyrim being a big one, but for me, the massive pop was September 2017 Nintendo Direct, which frankly, looking back, was not a great Direct, but it did have the announcement that both Wolfenstein 2 and Doom 2016,
Oh yeah,
both games that were either had just come out or were coming out. I can't remember.
Wolfenstein 2 came out the same day as Odyssey, so it was like a month and a half later.
Yeah, and Doom was a little over a year old at that point. These big, violent, rated M, third-party Western games were going to be on a Nintendo handheld system. And that was, that blew my mind. And Doom, I think, is... I did go back and play Skyrim on Switch, and that's actually where I have most of my time with Skyrim, but Doom was really the big third-party game that got me to want to play third-party games on Switch, and that is where I played Doom. I've never played Doom 2016 on any other system other than Switch, and it's not the best on Switch, but it is good on Switch, because that's a very good game.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it runs at this consistent, solid frame rate.
Yeah.
It's a visually very good-looking port for a Switch game. And just overall, I think it is, talking about the era of third-party ports on Switch, you can't talk about that without Panic Button, right? I feel like Panic Button was very instrumental in a lot of those especially early Switch era ports that were so successful. And Doom, I think, was kind of the coming out party for Panic Button's prowess for Switch ports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page for Panic Button. Interestingly enough, they helped with ReCore. Unrelated. But Doom in 2017, Wolfenstein 2, 2018, Warframe for Switch, Subnautica for Switch.
Apex.
I'm getting down there. Wolfenstein Youngblood, Doom 3, Forza... Oh, no, they have with Forza Horizon 4. That is unrelated. Doom Eternal for Switch, Apex Legends for Switch. So
Apex is on Switch?
Yeah, it doesn't look very good, Charlie. It does not look very good, but it is on Switch.
Not as impressive as Doom.
That's wild.
It was also a couple years too late.
Yeah. And also, Apex, a couple years newer, a couple years bigger. It's got a big map. It's online multiplayer. But that is definitely one of those teams that has helped to bring a lot of stuff to Nintendo that wouldn't be there otherwise. And I think that's kind of the general gist of my thoughts on third-party games on Switch, is they usually feel surprising because to that point in Nintendo history, it's like, well, this kind of stuff does not come to Nintendo systems. And if it does, it's a weird anomaly where you're like, Watch Dogs was on Switch? Or, sorry, a Wii U? Huh? Mm-hmm. Or the Call of Duty games that were on Wii that no one talks about being on Wii because they were way more popular on the other systems. Right. They feel like anomalies, but the ports that Switch has gotten has sort of, I think, spread the love, shared the joy, if you will, to bringing Nintendo players who had not been exposed to those kind of games, especially rated M games, to bringing those games to a totally new audience.
Yeah, it was really cool seeing Doom specifically. I never played Wolfenstein 2. I need to play that series. I know I would love it. But I had a PS4.
Wolfenstein 2 was one of Charlie's top 10 Switch games. Now,
really?
Don't play it on Switch. You have a PS5. Play it on PS5.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Even though I had a PS4 at the time and I had Doom on it, I ended up buying Doom on Switch, and I played it way more there. Mm-hmm. Including the multiplayer. It was really cool. I mean, we didn't have a FPS game at that point for Switch, like a multiplayer FPS. And I know Doom 2016's multiplayer isn't really that revered. It's kind of just a Halo clone. But I don't know. As a kid, as a 16-year-old, I thought it was a lot of fun just having a game like that, having a community. Another game that I want to talk about later is Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. I love that game on Switch. Even though it was a year late, it was one of the earlier games that really felt like it had like a community building around it for the Switch. And I know, looking back 8 years later, or however long it's been since Doom came out, or 7 years, it's a little harder to go back to. But in 2017, that was really impressive what Panic Button did.
Yeah.
And it definitely spruced up that holiday. We had Mario Odyssey, but then we had Doom and Skyrim like right around the corner. It was just perfect, like 1-2-3 punch in my opinion for 2017.
Yeah. And then of course, soon after that, I actually don't exactly remember where this was revealed, but I think another one of the most notorious and kind of important third-party ports to Switch is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Yeah.
E3
about-
2019.
Okay, 2019. Okay, so it was quite a bit later. But I remember that one being shown off, and that's another one where, and we're gonna be talking about this for a lot of these, especially big current AAA games. It is impressive that they are on Switch hardware. That is where my admiration begins and ends, because I do not want to play any of those games on Switch, but I vastly appreciate the very hard work that goes into downgrading those games in order to get them run on significantly weaker hardware than the other current generation systems. And The Witcher 3 was one of those ones that it has its own identity as a Switch port, where people say Switcher when they refer to the Switch port of Witcher 3.
Yeah.
And that's not something that ever really happens for other systems, because ports and other console versions are kind of just a given of, yeah, of course this is going to come to everything but Nintendo usually. But Switch has started to push back against that, and I certainly do think that once we get into stronger hardware with Nintendo's next system, that third-party support should be almost entirely ubiquitous. But it is reaching back into the quote-unquote back catalog. I mean, Witcher 3 was 4 years old at that point, but that was a game that people were still currently revering, and The Witcher 3 on stronger hardware is still a very good-looking game. And so porting games like Skyrim, which was much older at that point, and Doom, which was current, and then Witcher 3, which was a big surprise, is really where the energy towards third-party games on Switch comes. Like, Witcher 3 in handheld? Okay, it kind of looks like ass, but that's really cool.
Yeah, I think I think this is something that we're going to see a lot more pressure for as more and more third-party games come to Nintendo platforms in the future, as we're, again, on the eve of the Switch 2. But, I mean, can you imagine how widely adopted something like The Witcher 3 would have been if it had cloud saves with other versions of that game?
Sure.
Any kind of like big open world RPG or big RPG in general, like let's say you're playing Persona 5 and you don't have like a backbone to play your PS5 or your Xbox remotely. You're playing Persona 5 in bed, and then the save still transfers over for when you want to play in, you know, HDR 4K, have the full like resolution and color of a current gen powerful console on a nice TV. I think that kind of thing is going to be kind of the next frontier now that Fortnite has kind of knocked down the wall of crossplay.
Yeah, we did see some games over the course of the Switch, and Bo, you might be able to help me out here in terms of games that supported not only crossplay, but there's some that have cross progression with Steam, I believe.
Yeah, there definitely are. So I want to say Diablo 3 might have cross.
That sounds right.
Save.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also it's not Torchlight. It's there's something with a 2 in it.
Divinity.
Original Sin 2. Correct. Thank you very much. That's a game that in the Nintendo Direct that was revealed, they made a pretty big stink about, hey, this is not only on Switch, period, but cross-save with your Steam account, which, I mean, cross-save is something that really hadn't been touched too often outside of maybe there was like some Vita and PS3 or Vita PS4 cross-save stuff, but cross-save between different ecosystems was something very rare. And also, since the Switch launched, cross-play has become something that is much more common. And one of the first times I remember ever thinking specifically about cross-play was not in a Nintendo presentation, but in an Xbox presentation. They had the Better Together, I think it was, update. And they had this trailer that showed Minecraft characters walking through the world and showing, I think it was Xbox One and PC, and then a Nintendo Switch made out of Minecraft blocks. And that is a kind of collaboration that actually we can put a lot of praise. We can't put a lot of praise on Microsoft for a lot of things right now, but we can put a pretty solid amount of praise on them for a pretty strong collaboration with Nintendo since the Switch launched, with a lot of games being ported and collaborated on, and Minecraft being obviously the biggest one of those.
Minecraft, Banjo-Kazooie, Sea of Thieves,
Cuphead, Ori.
Yeah, isn't Pentiment also on Switch?
Yeah, it is now.
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
Yes,
That's
and
wild.
we're forgetting one. Grounded. That's
Grounded.
Grounded came to Switch, right? Yeah, because it was
I
just
believe so.
Hi-Fi
That's
Rush
shocking that
didn't
runs
have
on Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually the same E3 with that Better Together trailer as the Rocket League announcement.
Oh yeah.
Which actually, like, that was kind of the first thing we saw in their E3 2017 Direct.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big one that had crossplay, not between PlayStation and Switch. PlayStation was still not having it, but that was another really big one to see. I know Rocket League at that point was like maybe a year or two old.
Yeah,
but
2015.
Seeing Nintendo hasn't focused on it as much recently, but that in that first year, the Western third-party support specifically, and getting these like, these are all games that sell like 30 million copies at this point. Getting all of them on Switch in that first year was just really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I also really liked, especially early on in the Switch life cycle, watching Nintendo Directs, not knowing which cool games that you could play elsewhere were going to be brought to Switch, and that is still something that we feel a little bit with the partner showcases. But the spark has certainly been lost in terms of I don't get like super excited that a third party game is coming to Switch. But I remember a lot of specific third party on Switch reveals, even if they were games that were a decade old at that point. I mean, specifically, I remember one of my favorite directs, mostly because it ended with the reveal of Smash for Switch. But I believe it was March 2018, had a lot of ports in it. That's where Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was brought to Switch. So the first time the original Crash games, the Crash Trilogy, were playable on Nintendo hardware. Also in that direct, you had Okami and Undertale and South Park, The Stick of Truth. And okay, a lot of these games are very old at that point that they were being announced, 4 years, even more. But I remember watching those and be like, wait, this is awesome. I can play these on Switch on the go. And I was like watching that direct on my phone on a bus, and I'm like, dude, this could be me playing Okami on Switch in just a couple of months. And I never did, because then I found out that Okami is not like a 10-hour game like I thought it was. Apparently it's like 30 hours. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? But do you guys have any particular memories of a third-party reveal on Switch where like, wow, that's actually really awesome?
For me, I think it was September 2019. At this point, I had fallen off this game completely. But Overwatch actually opened that September Direct.
Well, remember, it was leaked.
And that's what got me back into it. Yeah, it leaked like crazy.
Yeah.
I think it was like a PDP case leaked.
Yeah.
That was like Overwatch brand.
Yep.
But having Overwatch on Switch like a month later was really cool. It never got like a physical. Rest in peace. But
well, good.
Having Overwatch
that wouldn't be
playable.
Useful anymore.
Well, yeah, that wouldn't be useful now. But having Overwatch on Switch playable in bed, that's what got me back into it. My boy Sigma. It was a lot of fun just getting back into Overwatch and seeing Nintendo support. Blizzard more so. I mean, we already saw Diablo 3 come over at that point, but Blizzard is another publisher that we hadn't really seen on Nintendo platforms, similar to Bethesda. So to see them bring their main game, essentially,
I believe there's a version
to
of
Switch was really
StarCraft
cool.
on N64. That's just me flexing my little bit of knowledge. But...
Okay, sorry. Jeez.
Charlie, any specific ones for you?
Yeah, I have to say, I think also this was a shadow drop in a different direct. This was from pretty sure this was the same E3 direct that we got Hollow Knight and Smash Bros at as well.
Yeah, E3
but it's
2018.
Fortnite.
Definitely, yeah.
Sure.
Fortnite, I think, is one of those games that like it gets poo-pooed a lot for kind of understandable reasons, right? It's this big hulking thing, but it's also like a really, really, really well-made multiplayer game. It runs really well on Switch. For the most part, I would say surprisingly well on Switch.
Yeah, let's go with that. I played a lot of Fortnite on Switch late last year when I first started getting into it, and I didn't have access to any stronger hardware that was on. And I got used to it. But
it runs worse now than it did in 2018, I think, doesn't it? Because they've updated a lot.
Yeah, probably. But that's a great pull. And Fortnite, I would say, is probably one of the biggest, most popular games ever, obviously. But on Switch, that is a place it is very playable. And people who are wanting to play Fortnite, it's free. You want to play it with your friends. You want to have it everywhere. And you're right. I remember that announcement where it was like the jumping off the battle bus thing. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, are you serious? That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, Reggie said it.
Yeah,
Reggie said, I can't wait to jump off the battle bus with
you. Oh, he
on
did
Fortnite.
say that. That's right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think then he went right into Hollow Knight, and we don't really need to go specifically into indies on Switch because I think that is something that's less.
That's a completely
surprising.
different episode, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, indies on Switch. But obviously, third-party support from smaller, more independent developers, it has been phenomenal on Switch.
Right.
And I would actually say that's maybe 30-40% of where the great, like, that's why you get a Switch, is you can play all these games on the go.
Yeah, because they run much better than something that was made for a console that's significantly more powerful than the Switch, right? But no, I mean, touching just very briefly on it, because again, I think this is worth doing in another episode. But yeah, the indie I think the indie support really is what most people think of when they think of non-Nintendo games on Switch.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. But also, it's like, okay, at that point, it's not particularly surprising because Wii U and 3DS also had great indie support, and Nintendo also supported indies quite a lot on those systems. And Shovel Knight was also one of the few launch titles on Switch, and so obviously there's a synergy there. But let's shift gears a little bit from talking about the big stuff to talking about the big new stuff, to talking about the older stuff, because I think that, again, the access to games history on Switch is one of my very favorite aspects of it, and mostly through collections. Now, Nintendo's games are solidly accessible through the Nintendo Switch Online services, but third-party developers, not only in the last 7 years, have been just making collections like crazy, but I would say there's probably a case to be made that Switch is a big reason why a lot of those games, a lot of those collections were sought out to be made, because bringing them to a totally new audience and having them be playable on the go, especially because a lot of those games, well, basically all the games we're talking about are not hardware intensive. They look and run great portably on Switch, and so you just get tons and tons and tons of collections from Capcom, from Konami, from all these big iconic series brought to Switch.
Now, Tucker, this isn't a collection, but I do want to mention one of my other favorite Nintendo Direct moments ever.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of old games.
Oh, Final
Fantasy. September 2018. It was September 2018. They're like, okay, we're bringing Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition to Switch.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're bringing this Chocobo Mystery Dungeon game. Okay, now we're bringing Final Fantasy 12. Actually, we're also bringing World of Final Fantasy. Oh, okay, also we're bringing 10, 9,
10-2.
and 7. And 10-2, yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite Nintendo Direct
Yeah.
moments, even though it was all old games. Seeing the mainline Final Fantasy games come back to a Nintendo platform, I mean, that was the first time we had seen that since Final Fantasy VI. That was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It's hard, it's easy to like forget how big of a deal that was, but seeing Square Enix and I think a lot of other Japanese third parties kind of reaffirm support for Nintendo after they had lost them on the Wii and Wii U, seeing that all come back on the Switch,
Good point.
beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And then the collections, I mean, once again, Japanese developers, I feel like, have done especially well with this. Konami with the Metal Gear collection and the Castlevania collections. Capcom with all of the Mega Man collections.
And
Battle Network selling super well.
The Street Fighter Anniversary collection, which has every Street Fighter through up to 4.
Well, you can't forget Ultra Street Fighter 2 The Final Challenge.
I could not forget that. Right, guys? Couldn't forget it.
I played so much of that game.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you like the 3D Hadouken mode?
No.
Did you play
That
it?
was weird. I tried it and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I not playing actual Street Fighter?
Yeah. That was a weird release.
I think it'd be kind of fun to think about like the different major third-party developers and think about who has supported Switch the best. Because I think that it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the course of a few years. I would say that we can give obviously major props to Bethesda, starting off the Switch very strong with a number of great ports, and then later down the line bringing the older Doom games, Doom 1, 2, 3, 64, Quake 2, those are all on Switch. But interestingly enough, Bethesda, I would sort of take those props away from them a little bit because their support has fallen off immensely, even in places where it would make sense for them to support Switch. I mean, why were there never ports of the older Fallout and Elder Scrolls games? Like there are places where I think they could have definitely gone farther. But for what's on there, it's obviously very impressive.
I would argue that Ubisoft is definitely up there.
Yeah.
They, I every platform that comes out, it's kind of like a given, right? That Ubisoft will be present at launch in some way. And in the Switch's case, in multiple ways, right? You had a couple Ubisoft games hit that first year. And we've seen games here and there from them. And they really are one of those companies that, with Starlink, with Mario plus Rabbids, where it isn't just the third-party relationship. It's a little bit more integrated into what Nintendo is doing. And I think that's another interesting thing to think about with the third-party era, the third-party stuff on Switch, where a lot of these, like, very anticipated ports, whether it's Fortnite, Payday, Rocket League, a lot of them get some kind of Switch exclusive...
Skyrim.
Or celebratory, Skyrim, Switch exclusive cosmetics or some kind of celebratory thing, and it's never anything huge, but it's always something worth. It's always something that's very like celebratory and acknowledges the fact that this game is finally on Switch.
Yeah,
you can play as Ganondorf in Diablo 3. That's awesome.
Really?
I didn't know that.
There's like a costume for Ganondorf.
Whoa, that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it just goes to show that these developers, and I think it's probably because it felt special. Like it's not. There probably weren't these kind of same collaborations when we know there weren't like, oh hey, Skyrim's on PlayStation, let's put Kratos in there. No, that didn't happen. But you're right that there are these moments where the game is revealed. Not only okay, it's coming to Switch, but a little extra love and care was put into making sure it felt special that these big third-party games and lots of Western developers were working with Nintendo, and they like that. They're like, oh, this is awesome. We're gonna put the Breath of the Wild costume into Skyrim, which looks goofy as hell, but it's awesome that it's in there.
One publisher I think has been really hit or miss is Bandai Namco. They support the Switch pretty well overall. Like a lot of their games, particularly their anime side, which is what I mostly care about, that all usually ends up coming to Switch, but it all comes to Switch like a later. And it's stuff that doesn't need to come later. Like, great example right now, we're seeing One Piece Odyssey come over to the Switch. I wasn't that ready. Or last year, Demon Slayer came, I think, 18 months after the Switch version. They do this, it feels like a tactic, and I think Atlas also does this a little bit, where they kind of know they can sell it on PlayStation first, and then get people to double dip. That is a practice I'm not a fan of, and I feel like a couple publishers really do and kind of enforce that, and I'm not a fan of it. It's cool to see the games come, but you get like a half applause for that. At least they're bringing them over.
I want to talk a little bit more about the sort of game's history side, because I mentioned collections, and we can go through Mega Man, Castlevania, Street Fighter, all these collections that are really great. But I think that for me, those feel a little less exciting because obviously they're everywhere. But also they're older games where it's not particularly impressive or exciting that they're like, okay, you're running Mega Man 2 on Switch. Yeah, of course you are.
That is exciting.
Of course you are. Oh, you're running Doom 1 on Switch. Doom 1 runs on everything. It's the meme. Skyrim is on everything. Okay, that was exciting, but it's the ones that I think come out of left field that excite me the most. And I want to shift gears a little bit more to one of my favorite things about Switch is a lot of games that I love that I did not play on Switch later got brought to Switch. And if I could have played them on Switch or hadn't already, I would have played them there because I think it's a great form factor and I love the portability. But a big chunk of my favorite games of all time came later to Switch. The BioShock series. I mean, 2K actually did a pretty solid job at getting their back catalog with the Borderlands games and XCOM and the BioShock series brought to Switch. That's pretty crazy that those games are on Switch and they kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they came later too. I feel like they came after a lot of the hype had really died down for third-party games on Switch in a way that I think kind of speaks to maybe 2K's overall business practices a lot, where we hear 2K doing stupid things all the time. From a business side, but also just like we talk about kind of that early gold rush of bringing things to Switch, but it again is great to see it more consistent, because if we got all of these games at once, not many of them would stand out. I mean, Skyrim would have stood out because it is coming to the Switch and it's in this reveal trailer, but if Skyrim came at the same time as BioShock, Doom, everything, like every single Western third-party game, we wouldn't really care about it or talk about it as much.
And that pacing has been interesting because there was never a specific glut of a ton of third-party games are coming. It just feels like over the course of the Switch not only being more accessible in terms of Nintendo reaching out to third-party companies, but also as the third-party companies realized, this thing is popular. This thing is selling, and games are selling very, very well on Switch. You can see different teams realize that and then start to put in the work to bring their older games to Switch, because people buy a lot of older games on Switch. There's a huge amount of games that came out prior to 17 that I own and have played on my Switch. But looking back at more of my favorite games that are on Switch, I mean, I didn't play any of these games on Switch, but I could have, or I could now. The Ori games are on Switch. The Katamari games are on Switch. Dark Souls Remastered is on Switch. It's interesting that they never went farther than just Dark Souls 1.
Well, didn't Dark Souls Remastered kind of not beat a lot of controversy? What'd you say?
It also got delayed. It didn't run that well, and it also got delayed from... It was announced in a Nintendo Direct, but then the Switch version got delayed.
Right, yes.
Which was really weird.
Well, that does happen quite frequently. That happened with Wolfenstein 2. That happened with Doom Eternal. They want these games to come out on Switch, and then they just... I don't know what happens. I'm working at these teams, but it's like, Where's the game? What's going on? That's kind
I
of
was kind of surprised Doom Eternal actually ended up happening.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I thought that was gonna get canceled.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest.
There
Well, that
was
was
a
because that
lot
took
of
such a
question
long
about
time.
that. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one era specifically, Tucker, you mentioned that there weren't a ton of ported games that kind of all came out at the same time, but I think there's one exception to that rule,
Okay.
and that is cloud games on Switch.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There, especially early on, I want to say like late 2017, early 2018, there were like 4 or 5 cloud games announced in like a Japanese direct or something like that, and they all kind of hit around the same time.
Yeah. And some of those still haven't actually been released cloud version Switch wise outside of Japan. There are, I think, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is nuts
Yeah,
because
Odyssey.
that's obviously a big game and a very graphically intensive game. And it was new at that point in time, or newer. And that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is still not available on Switch in the West, as far as I know.
Have you guys messed around like either by doing like Japanese accounts or like doing any of the Kingdom Hearts games or anything like that on the cloud?
Kingdom
I
Hearts.
tried Resident Evil 7 back in the day.
Oh, that's
back in,
right.
I think that happened. I think it came out in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a good experience. I don't know if that's, to be fair, I was playing a Japanese cloud game. I don't know if that had something to do with it.
Sure.
But because when I stream stuff on PlayStation Now or PS Plus, it's just called PS Plus now, that works pretty well for me. But on Switch, no. I do wonder what the metric for success is on something like that, because we actually saw a lot of it happen just a couple years ago in 2022, where like a lot of it happened again. We saw like a second wave almost, where all the Resident Evils came over, like in the West.
Yeah.
Control came out, Hitman 3, Square Enix did Guardians of the Galaxy.
They
We saw
did.
the Kingdom Hearts games. I can't imagine any of those did well.
No,
Right?
because I feel like people find it frustrating. Because to be completely honest, I feel like it defeats the purpose of having your game on the Switch. It's like, yeah,
100%.
you can play Guardians of the Galaxy on Switch,
But why?
but not really, because you can't take advantage of it being on the Switch. You can in terms of if someone has a Nintendo console, they can now play your game in some contexts. But the great thing about the Switch is that you can take these games anywhere, and it is a meme to play Skyrim on the toilet, but it's also fun because Skyrim's a great game and it runs well and it's on the Switch.
and
but-
fully functional on
Yeah.
the Switch.
But Guardians, or one of my favorite games of all time, Control, I'm never going to play that on Switch, not only because I already beat it, and I already own it on PlayStation, but because why would I want to play Control on
Yeah,
Switch?
you can't take Control on the airplane with you.
No.
On a Steam
would
Deck you can, but not on a Switch.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting because cloud versions of games I don't think are... It's an option to play it through what was called PS Now, or Xbox has their xCloud service. But are there cloud versions of games on other systems, period? Like, this is the only version you can play? I don't think that's the case.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I'd be hard pressed to think of something. I mean, I think the closest thing we have to that is something that isn't out yet with Kojima's
Sure.
game that
Yeah,
isn't a
yeah,
game
sure.
that uses cloud technology, and it's 8 different things, and it's a new genre, but it's also an old genre that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something esoteric.
But the thing about the cloud games is, I think you're totally right, Bill, that they can't have sold very well because obviously we live in a bubble. We live in the hardcore gaming bubble. We hear a lot of echo chambery things about we feel like everyone feels the same thing. But you got to imagine this bleeds a little bit outside the bubble of people just are upset that it's just a cloud version. And some of them are a little ridiculous. I mean, you talk about like Resident Evil 7 or Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's like, okay, that's probably the only way you could get it on the Switch. But Kingdom Hearts? Are you
That's no
serious?
excuse.
And
There's-
actually,
Maybe Kingdom Hearts 3. Maybe.
Maybe.
Even that I don't really buy that, to be honest. They got Nier Automata running on Switch.
Yes.
I think you can get Kingdom Hearts 3 running on Switch if they try.
Yeah.
Isn't Kingdom Hearts 3 made in Unreal?
I don't know.
I believe
I'm not a
it's
Kingdom
on
Hearts
Unreal
guy.
4. I believe it's Unreal 4.
Yeah.
Which
Unreal Engine
Pikmin
is
4 runs on Unreal 4.
is like so well made to scale to different devices. That is like part of
Yeah.
the reason why a lot of companies like using that. It is like kind of the perfect thing to scale onto Switch if your game's already been made onto it. And obviously I'm not just saying, oh, you adjust the graphics slider or whatever, but like it is designed partially so well used and loved because it is so easy to scale comparatively.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's confusing to me.
It's especially odd from Square Enix, where I would say they're right up there with like Ubisoft or something. One of the main supporters of the Switch.
Yeah.
I mean, they've brought everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything. Unless we're talking their major AAA titles, which we're hearing today will probably be coming to Switch too. We're not getting 7 Remake or 16 or even like Final Fantasy 15. I know that we were kind of hoping for that back in 2017, but literally everything else came. Kingdom Hearts, for some reason, got singled out. And I don't know why. Was it just like a rush job because Sora was getting in Smash? Because I remember Sakurai talked about him in his, in the little Sakurai Presents. He was like, yeah, they're going to come to the cloud. It's like...
Yeah, but I want to play. I want to play the game on Switch.
I want to actually play. I actually want to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really odd where the effort went or didn't go, because you could easily have seen them trying to do some sort of Final Fantasy 15 cloud version if they felt that that was going to be something that people frankly really cared about. But Square Enix is also interesting in that one of the most notorious examples of one of their modern collections, the Final Fantasy... Well, actually, what is that collection called?
The Pixel
1 through 6?
Remasters?
The Pixel Remasters, thank you. The Pixel Remasters announced in their 2022, I believe, or no, 2021?
That's 2022.
Their
That's
E3,
2022.
and that was a weird E3. And they were like, look, the Pixel Remasters of the original Final Fantasy games, which have been remade and ported quite a few times, but they've never been brought to consoles. And we're like, hey, we're making these for PC and mobile. And everyone's like, they're already available on PC and mobile. What are you talking about? And then, of course, eventually they came to other systems, but that's a bizarre one in terms of you don't think people are going to buy Final Fantasy 1 through 6 on Nintendo Switch? Are you kidding me? And I'm sure that's where that collection sold the best.
Yeah, that was really weird.
Yeah. Now, one final topic on the topic of third-party games on Switch is games that were surprised haven't come to Switch. And I want to add a little addendum to this. Surprised it hasn't come to Switch. And do you think it will come on the next system? Whether or not that is just a port or of an older game that you're surprised didn't come to Switch because why it couldn't, of course it could run, or a game that is newer or bigger or more graphically intensive that could not run on Switch that you think could come on the next system once it has a little bit more horsepower. And I think all of this is put through the lens of Nintendo is probably going to be putting a lot of effort into making sure that bigger, newer games are coming to their system, because these companies want their games to be on the most popular gaming system. So what are your thoughts? Any games that you're surprised haven't come because they could run, or ones that you think will come because they will be able to run?
Well, Bo, before we started recording, I feel like you and I had a moment of telepathic connection as we were discussing adding this category to the show notes. You want to talk about Grand Theft Auto 5 and why it is so shocking that it hasn't come to Switch yet?
Yeah, GTA 5 is a big head scratcher. Rockstar kind of exists in their own bubble where I feel like they just do whatever they want. GTA 5 has sold, I think, over 200 million copies now. And it's not even on the Switch, which has sold 140 million units. That is one of the most head-scratching, like, what? Why? This makes so much sense. We got Red Dead Redemption 1, we got GTA the Trilogy. Why not their most popular game ever? A game that was made, remind you, for the PS3 and 360.
Yeah.
Even if they gimp it and they get rid of the online, which I know is the main draw, but even if they just sold the single player, maybe they don't want to deal with having to update the online on the Switch. Maybe it's a little bit more of a pain. I don't know. Even just the single player. It was always baffling to me that never came over.
Yeah, definitely. Because they want to sell as many copies of that game as they can. And having it portably would be a massive draw. And a lot of people will double dip. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people already have on multiple generations of systems and the PC version and everything. But that is obviously one of the games of all time. And having it not be on Nintendo at all is very odd. And Rockstar is also a company that I think is the most hit or miss in terms of their Switch support. L.A. Noire, first year of Switch. Why? Why that game?
Sure.
What are we doing?
Yeah, why that game?
Cool, great. I'm very happy it's there, and that's actually where Abram played it for the first time. That's one of his favorite games. But why that game then? And then Red Dead last year on Switch, and GTA the Trilogy.
But not on PC.
Yeah.
What?
So Rockstar as a whole is just really weird with how they dole out these ports. I think Bethesda might be kind of similar with their Fallout and Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah.
I think they're just like holding on to them for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, there's another one right there. You said Fallout. I mean, I haven't played any of the Fallout games, so I can't speak to their kind of scale and how they would work on Switch. But I mean, Fallout 3, that was an early 360 game. Fallout New Vegas. 4, I can understand why it's not on Switch.
We got Shelter, the mobile game.
Of course we did.
That's true.
And Elder Scrolls Blades, actually.
That is
the mobile
true.
game for Elder Scrolls. Yeah. It's very weird.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go through some bigger modern games that I think have a pretty solid chance to come to a more powerful system. And some of these are ones that are a little bit older, so like, okay, it makes sense that they're not on there. Primarily, why are there no Yakuza games on Switch? The Yakuza
That's a
games
big one.
could
Yeah.
absolutely run on Switch. And they would sell
least all the older ones.
They would sell a shitload on Switch.
Yeah.
Well, no,
oh my god,
but
that's a
I
gold
honestly
mine.
think that the newer ones could as well, and they obviously will definitely be able to on the next system. So I would not be surprised if we got a Final Fantasy style, just announcing
Moment.
all of them coming
What
to
if-
the
Please.
system.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, that's one of those things. I mean, even especially with the most new and graphically intensive games in that series being almost completely turn-based,
Yeah.
it's free,
And they're still on PS4.
it's free real
Yeah.
estate. It's free real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about some more recent sort of game of the year massive games? Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate,
Baldur's
Red
Gate,
Dead.
yeah.
I know it didn't win, and it's a meme, but it's better now. Cyberpunk 2077. What do you think about these games? I think they've got a pretty good chance of having some. Maybe it's not the internal teams making them. I know that Larian is kind of distanced themselves from working on Baldur's Gate, but I would believe that Bandai Namco wants Elden Ring on Switch.
Yeah.
I would imagine
Yeah.
that Wizards of the Coast would love to have Baldur's Gate 3 on Switch. Cyberpunk, they ported Witcher 3 to Switch 1, so I would imagine that Cyberpunk is probably in the works right now and might come out within the first year of the system of the next system.
I'd be willing to bet money. If we get a similar reveal trailer from what we had in 2016 for the Switch 2, Elden Ring will be in that trailer.
Yeah.
I think that is one Nintendo will specifically go for to get it on Switch.
That
Because
is-
I know Dark Souls Remastered didn't run too well on the current Switch, but From Software, one of the major Japanese developers that didn't really support the Switch, I think Nintendo wants to rectify that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is a great shout. I think you're right on the money there, Bo.
Yeah,
because
and you can also think of the way that some of these teams have grown in their support of Switch over the course of the generation, which is kind of what I was talking about in terms of, hey, our old games can sell really well on Switch, so let's put them on Switch. Things like the Batman Arkham games. I could see, I don't know if it would sell particularly well, but I could see them working on Suicide Squad to come to the next system. Capcom, a lot their games they do a lot of support on Switch, but they don't do a lot of support of current games on Switch, and so I can see a whole slew of, let's say, post 2019 games coming natively to Switch 2. Devil May Cry 5, Street Fighter 6, Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm sure that these games are. I'm sure that they really, really, really want these games to come natively to their next system, and that also includes the newer Resident Evil games. I would be pretty surprised if we get to Resident Evil 1 remake in 2026 or whatever, and that's not day and date on Switch. I think it probably would be.
the working rumor, and this is, please do not take this to the bank. This is just a rumor. I don't know anything, but the working rumor is that Monster Hunter Wilds, when it was first revealed last year, or last year, when it was first revealed last year,
Yeah.
the working rumor was that it was going to be kind of the debut Switch 2 game for Capcom and for a lot of like the third party stuff. And knowing how successful Monster Hunter is, and knowing how successful it's been on Switch, I feel like I'm certainly expecting that will kind of open the floodgates for the more modern RE Engine games to come to Switch, or Switch 2, I should say.
Yeah, I really hope they go back and fix what they did with the cloud versions of all the Resident Evils and properly bring those.
I
in,
think
too.
that's very likely.
Yeah, I can imagine Capcom having a field day in that first
Oh,
year.
yeah.
I think-
just bringing everything over.
I think EA is also going to be kind of a surprise hit on the next Switch.
Sure.
I don't really know anything about how they do development or any of that, but like I totally feel like, in the way that we've seen all the Aspire ports of Star Wars games find so much success on the original Switch, it would not surprise me in the slightest to see things like the Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order games, or Titanfall 2, that kind of thing coming to Switch.
Wow.
Where
I don't think they care about Titanfall 2 anymore. I'll be completely
sadly,
honest.
I'm coping right now.
No, but I think you're totally right, and I think that a team like EA is interesting because they have supported this Switch, but only kind of, and they certainly haven't put their effort into it that would be commensurate to
Gotta
the fact
pull out
that
the hand quotes for that one.
pulling out hand quotes. They put their effort into supporting Switch, but by the time the next system is coming out, with the fact that older systems are holding on longer now than ever, I would be totally flabbergasted if we're still getting the like the EA or the FIFA/FC like anniversary game. What are they called?
Legacy edition.
Yeah, the Legacy editions.
Yeah.
No chance in shit. They want the full game
I
on
mean,
there.
we don't even get Madden on Switch. There's never been a Madden on Switch.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's nuts because Wii U had it. We had them.
Yeah.
No Madden on Switch? Are you kidding me? That would sell very well, and I can actually something that Bo, you and I have talked about before, but in terms of what Nintendo could do to make their next system keep on par with Switch in terms of sales, I think that's unlikely just given how smash hit the Switch is. But getting the biggest third-party games that people just buy and play constantly to come to their system, day and date especially, I think will be very, very big. And I think that Madden and Call of Duty will be two of the biggest ones there.
You just reminded me. Nintendo has a contract with Microsoft that Call of Duty has to come to their platforms for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be really exciting. That's also another one I was kind of surprised we never saw anything on Switch 1.
Yeah.
Be like Modern Warfare Remastered or just something of the older games. But
Black
with
Ops
Call of
2.
Duty...
Warzone. Warzone
Ops 2, please.
or
Please.
Call of Duty Mobile. Why are those
Right.
games not on Switch?
Right. But since we know, I mean, we know we're getting Call of Duty on Switch too.
Yeah.
I think that alone is a good sign for a lot of Western, more AAA, big budget games coming over. We talk about EA. I think if Call of Duty's on Switch, there's going to be an internal push to get Battlefield on Switch.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're not going to let Call of Duty just have that. I can't imagine it.
Yeah.
GTA 6 is another one. Once again, that's a little weird because Rockstar is there's sickos over there. But
There's no way.
But maybe.
If that happens...
That's the first quintuple A game.
True. That is true. That one's definitely less likely, but yeah, if we're getting Call of Duty, I imagine a lot of these more gritty dude bro kind of AAA games will be making their way.
Yeah, and that again, I think that's the nail in the coffin in the good way. In terms of we are finalizing the fact that Nintendo is dominant right now. Their system is selling commensurate to systems that came out 4 years after it, and even exceeding them right now. And it's because they've just had a great tail, and their first-party support is mostly what's driven that. But I can absolutely see Nintendo being the console that people go to in 5 or 6 years, because it not only has Nintendo's games, which are a major draw, but has everything else that they want to play as well that, frankly, isn't from PlayStation. And I can see PlayStation, and if Charlie is right, maybe the biggest new Rockstar games being the only games that aren't coming actively or being supported on Nintendo's next system. And that would just mean that, I mean, Xbox is already kind of irrelevant, but I see, and here's the final thing about in terms of support for the next system. Xbox games.
No, I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
We're gonna see their entire catalog come over.
I completely believe that.
What about... another thing we haven't touched on is the Sega remasters.
Oh, totally. Yeah, but Sega's been
Or
great
remakes,
at
not
supporting
remasters.
Switch.
Like the Jet Set Radio remake, the Crazy
Reboots.
Taxi remake, all
It's
that.
reboots. Yeah, they are new
Reboots.
games. They're not remakes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Which I think the messaging has been very poor.
It has.
on
Yes.
that. Yeah.
And also, weren't some of
But
those
yeah.
there was like more of them that were announced afterward, but no one's really talked about. I can't remember what they are.
I think they've just leaked.
Okay.
Okay.
I think they're making a new soccer rewards game that was leaked. Virtua Fighter.
Yeah.
I'll be bringing everything back. That'll all come to Switch. I can't imagine Sega not supporting a Switch 2.
No, because they've also been great at supporting Switch, and it makes it even
Except for
funnier
Yakuza.
that Yakuza is the one thing that they're doing, because they've gotten to the point where Atlas is very good at supporting Switch, and I absolutely believe that Metaphor will come in with the first year of the Switch, and Persona 6 will more than likely be day and date on the next system, and all these, like,
The paint bucket.
it's coming. It's coming, guys. And I think that this has been a good way to sort of look at how Switch's third-party support has grown over the course of its life cycle and become a very consistent part of it. Legacy titles, more current titles, getting there with cloud software, but those games should be doing better on the next system, and newer, bigger games, the big IP that haven't touched Nintendo in a decade, should be coming, and we can watch this nice, solid growth between Wii U having, I would say, like quarter to 1/5 assed support from third parties at the beginning of its life cycle, to Switch being, seems like it grows in terms of its support over the course of its life, to sure and shit day one. Day one. And that first year is going to be very, very telling in terms of how much people are going to want to support the next system. But we also have some thoughts from our community members in terms of what their favorite games are for third-party games on Switch, what their favorite memories are, what their thoughts are on this topic overall. And so it is time, Charlie, for Friend Coded.
Woo,
that is
Friend
our
Coded.
segment reading out the submissions from our community members. Of course, if you want to be a part of this in the future, not only does Charlie tweet out the prompt to his audience on his Twitter profile, which is linked in the description, but also in the description is the Backlog Banter Discord server where I share it with the Discord community. Charlie, how many? We got a little less replies on this one than I think our last ones, but we got enough to fill us out.
So, yeah, we have a couple of replies from great friends of the show. First off, we have Jake Steinberg coming through with Divinity Original Sin 2 Definitive Edition. Wow, that's a lot of divs. Persona 5 Royal, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, and Diablo 3 Eternal.
Yeah.
It's a great lineup.
And those are games that came to Switch kind of over the course of its history. We were talking about Divinity Original Sin 2 earlier, but Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen was, I think, a totally random one. Just kind of came out and I was like, oh, really? Oh.
Well, I remember Dark Arisen. I feel like the port of that and the port of Beyond Good and Evil 2 were both kind of tied to speculation. They both of those ports leaked, and they were tied to speculation about sequels that were like pie in the sky, like
Sure.
they're never gonna make these,
Yeah,
then they got made.
I gotcha, yeah.
So I think that's
and,
cool.
and Persona is also an interesting one because it took a while for those games to be ported. And Bo, correct me if I'm wrong, but those came. No, wait, Persona 3. Well, there's some weird things about those in terms of Persona 3 Reload was announced a little bit later, right? For Switch.
Yeah, that was announced the following. Well, Persona 3 Reload's not on Switch.
Oh,
That game never came, which is why I think Atlas' support of Switch hasn't been the best.
Yeah.
Soul Hackers 2 also not on Switch. But yeah, I think it was E3 2022. We saw Persona 3, 4, and 5 Royal all announced at Xbox's showcase, and then they came out day and date on Nintendo and Xbox.
Did all three of them come out on Switch, or was 5 later? I feel like 5 came out like a couple weeks or months later.
It was the same.
Oh,
day.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
and that's pretty goddamn cool. And now those great games that, frankly, they're over time, I would absolutely believe that they're going to be most popular on Nintendo. And as Atlas doesn't do exclusivity with PlayStation anymore, games like Metaphor and like Persona 6, I think that will only be drilled in further of, yeah, these games are not only great on Nintendo, but maybe best on Nintendo because you can take them wherever you want.
I have to imagine Sony sweating
Yeah.
a little bit.
But I go, wait, hold on. Square Enix and Atlas, they don't want to just do shit with us
We're
anymore?
losing our two major Japanese supporters.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, not losing them, but you know what I mean.
Losing their exclusivity, which is kind of important.
You're right. That's a big deal.
But it's becoming less and less important in the modern day, which is interesting. And I also fully believe that, as we were learning about today, in terms of Square Enix wanting to do more multi-platform stuff, that a lot of the biggest Square Enix stuff that hasn't hit Nintendo, mostly because it's too big and looks too good, they'll find a way. Life will find a way to get Final Fantasy 16 on the next Nintendo system.
100%. Pulling from another one from the community, we have Evan, a homie from the Wisconsin Smash scene. He comes through with Dragon's Dogma, once again, Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, Octopath Traveler 2, and Digimon Stories Cyber Sleuth.
Any thoughts on any of those games, Bo?
I've always wanted to play the Digimon games, but I've never gotten around to it.
It seems like you're kind of nonsense, frankly.
Yeah. You like Pokemon? What the fuck? What are you talking about?
We have Bloops replying, and Bloop says, "We Love Katamari has been so good for me. The Switch's natural ability for multiplayer made this game killer to bring to a friend's house. The series feels so natural to the system in general, it really fits the Portal aspect of the Switch." Charlie, another opportunity for us to reference how much we love Katamari, and how much we love Katamari.
We should do a segment called We Love Katamari. And whenever Katamari comes up, it's just like we just talk about Katamari. We like talk about we just listen to the music for 5 minutes or something like that. But no, I mean, We Love Katamari and Katamari Damacy Reroll are both great examples of Bandai Namco kind of doing their best iteration of support on the Switch, right? You have these kind of revivalist ports of games we haven't seen on modern platforms in a very long time suddenly being fully playable, feature complete with new content is something I feel like you don't always see, and has, as Bo, you've pointed out a couple times, is a little inconsistent with some of their other exploits on Switch.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a little bit from the Discord community members. We can go back to the last few that we have from Twitter. First up, my friend Franz, whose username is still, to this day, Babylon's Fall finisher. Because he grinded to beat Babylon's Fall right before it got completely shut down.
Oh,
So we're very proud of you, Franz. Congratulations.
good job.
One of my greatest regrets is not platinuming that. I beat it. I rolled credits, but I didn't platinum it. I wish I had. That game's pretty fun. It was fun
It was.
before it got taken away forever.
Franz says, third-party games on Switch for the first few years were really sick and hype, as new Nintendo game announcements sometimes are for me. I'm shocked we never got GTA 5, though, or many obvious ports. But hey, Persona 5 came out. That was another one that was like legendary. Of like, just put Persona 5 on Switch. What is wrong with you?
Well, I mean, Joker.
Yeah, I'd say. Go ahead.
Joker came to Smash so early in the Switch's life cycle. I mean, it wasn't even 2 years. Or, no, it was. Yeah, it wasn't even 2 years old when Joker was revealed and added to the game, and like, it took what, 3 years? I want to say 3-4 years.
5 years. It was 5 years.
5 years from when Joker was revealed to when from when his game that he's from came to Switch. That is absurd.
Yeah.
It was interesting seeing both those games come over because we got 2 games from early 2017 that people really wanted in Persona 5 and Nier Automata, and they both got ported 5 years later in the same month in 2022. It took a long time, but those were both, like, I would say some of the highest, most requested games.
Totally. And both of them are great on Switch. I mean, Abram just handed me his copy of Nier on Switch. And he's like, just play through Nier.
It's really impressive what they did.
Yeah. Scruffy in the Discord says, in terms of third-party games, I find it interesting how particular games themselves fit the Switch's hardware. Some games feel naturally suited to Switch, while others feel like they were forced. Games like Puyo Puyo Tetris, Ori and the Blind Forest, and Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line feel absolutely perfect for Switch. On the other hand, you have the weird trend of cloud versions of big games, and that feels like it totally misses the point. It doesn't feel like it fits the design philosophy of Switch. Kingdom Hearts is especially weird for this. I don't understand why the Kingdom Hearts games were cloud versions. In general, I feel like certain types of games just work on Switch, where others feel a little bit pushed onto it without much thought as to why the Switch works.
Thank you for shouting out Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line, one of the best rhythm games ever made.
It's really good. I played a lot of that game last year. Very, very good game.
Puyo Puyo Tetris is also very good. Love that game. Never played the sequel, though.
The sequel is very good.
Do you want to take care of I think there's just one more reply on Switch. Or, Jesus, I got Switch on the brain. On Twitter.
Let's see. Yes, I closed it. Let me pull.
I can just read it if you want.
Oh, and then Patrick Foley says Hades on the Switch was like the perfect combination of game and system. And I think, speaking to Scruffy's point from the Discord, that is like any kind of roguelike, I think, and this is going to be a recurring theme on this podcast because I adore roguelikes, but Hades in particular being this action game that's not very not very like button input intensive, but it is like still like high speed, very intense, like action based gameplay, I think is perfect for the Switch because you can still play it anywhere, but it's not like Bayonetta or Devil May Cry where you are trying to cycle through different like combinations of attacks. There are very simple combinations with complex applications, whereas other action games are more about the complex combinations that are, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say, where
we come down to this. Hades is a great game, and it's great on Switch.
Yes.
And Hades 2 is going to be great on Switch.
Yeah. Not even Switch 2. That will come
of course.
OG Switch.
Oh,
yeah. Can't wait.
The final response that we have comes from the Discord as well, and it's from his name is Stephen Age. It's one word, so Stefanage. That's how I'm gonna say it. Stefanage says, "I feel like I fall into the camp of most people, where I have the Nintendo thing to play Nintendo things. Third-party support isn't really something I seek from those systems because of the power differences. Though I do like to play smaller games, only as I don't have a Steam Deck though. If I had that, I would be balachoing there certainly. Historically." Third party of AAA, even Double, if that still exists in the stranger market, have been compromised versions or those strange streaming copies. I'd love to have great games made for what the Switch can do, but in a post-Steam Deck world, I'm not sure what the Switch offers apart from a place to play Nintendo games. Maybe if they had cultivated a better online infrastructure, I'd feel more invested. Now, it's interesting, because I do think there's a pretty good argument to be made in terms of a lot of games losing the excitement that they're available on Switch, particularly because it's a handheld hybrid system. because of the Steam Deck and other systems like it that were inspired by the Switch. I'm playing a lot of great games on more current games on my Steam Deck. I have Death Stranding downloaded on my Steam Deck. And so I think I agree that there is a little bit lost in terms of how exciting it is to finally be playing a big modern game on handheld, because Steam Deck does that better than Switch. But I think what Steven's missing is that it's handheld. Sure, okay, maybe that's a little less special, but it's that it's on a Nintendo system, and that people are like you and have a Nintendo system for Nintendo games, but now suddenly have access to a plethora of other games. That is going to be the combination that is what makes the next Nintendo system so killer, is that you can play Mario Kart and Call of Duty on one system, which hasn't been possible for well over a decade.
Yeah. It's also cool for me because I play a lot of Japanese games, and a lot of Square Enix's output has been very tailored to the Switch. Basically everything that's not mainline numbered Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts is more or less designed for the Switch. So with stuff like Octopath and Triangle Strategy and Live Alive and Bravely Default, a lot of those were actually exclusive, but those types of games are third party, but also they felt like they were made for the Switch, which made them feel more like Nintendo games inherently.
Sure.
Nintendo published them, so quite literally they were. But you know what I mean? Like a lot of their smaller games, even stuff like Harvestella and Dragon Quest Treasures, even Dragon Quest 11, I actually played that on Switch recently. And yeah, it runs worse than the PS4 version, but I don't know. I think a lot of that stuff definitely does feel at home on Nintendo. Once you start getting into the Western stuff, that's definitely a little bit more not as like obvious, like, oh yeah, Overwatch, that's a Nintendo game. But I think they've done a great job this generation setting people up for the expectation that Elden Ring, Call of Duty, Battlefield, like all these things will be coming to Nintendo eventually, and it won't be as jarring as if it was like a Wii U to Switch 2 transition. I feel like this is a good like middle of the road. We get a little bit of everything, but not everything.
Yeah.
Which we will.
And it still does mean that while there is that little bit loss of spark in terms of it's exciting to see something on Nintendo /Switch or /handheld, that there's still some things that are going to be huge pops when they show up in Nintendo Direct. We're talking about Xbox games, which of course are for a different reason that's ridiculous. But when GTA 5 is inevitably revealed to have a Nintendo version that has never happened before, that's going to be an insane moment. The same with the Call of Duty games. When a Call of Duty game shows up, or like a collection of the older games show up in Nintendo Direct, that's going to be a massive exciting moment. And so it hasn't lost that spark entirely. And primarily because even though it might have lost the handheld spark, like, yeah, okay, I can go play Call of Duty on my Steam Deck, it's never been on a Nintendo system. Or hasn't for a while in certain instances. And so having all that in one place is really what's going to synergize in a super great way.
What do you guys think? So a lot of games that have been ported to Switch, especially these big Western games, have some kind of Switch exclusive content or cosmetic. What do you think the GTA 5 exclusive Switch celebratory thing is going to be?
Ooh, that's really interesting.
I think I have a really funny one. What's up?
Breath of the Wild paraglider.
Is in GTA 5? Honestly,
that would be awesome.
that's not a bad idea.
It could be something of like Mario Kart style cars that you could drive around in. I think that would make a lot of sense. There's a lot of cars in GTA 5.
What about a radio station?
So you play Nintendo Music One, that'd be cool.
Yeah, would be cool. That's not happening.
That's not happening. I would love that though. That would be so sick.
The reality is they're not going to collaborate with GTA.
Sadly,
there's no way they're putting Nintendo content in GTA. But
I don't know though.
Yeah, the paraglider. They're not putting a Samus skin in Fortnite because there's guns in Fortnite. They're not going to put a game where you can go to a strip club.
Well, they didn't put the Samus skin in Fortnite because they wanted Samus to only be on Switch.
Well, sure, but I guess it could be a similar thing where Rockstar, because it's online.
Sure.
So if you're driving a
Mario Kart, and I'm sure GTA
Kart,
Online would also be coming alongside that.
But that's why a radio station.
Yeah.
That could work. That could make sense.
Well, we will see. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us for episode 3 of Nintendo Select Podcast. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd be very shocked if you're watching through this, and you got to the end and you weren't already subscribed. Just because of how great the episode was, right, guys?
That's right.
I thought it was a good episode.
But also, I will be leaving the link to Bo's channel, who has many times more subscribers than me, in the description. So if you like current Nintendo news and you want someone that knows their shit and isn't like pulling stuff out of their ass, which there are some of Bo's contemporaries that do that. He's a no-nonsense motherfucker. He puts out his videos within a couple hours of the news happening. It's great stuff. I watch I got Bo Talks Games notifications on my phone. And so I watch them whenever they come out. And I highly recommend it. Yeah. Charlie has his Twitter is in the description of this video. Mine is, and I guess I'll put Bo's as well. But any closing thoughts, you two? Bo, as the first guest of Nintendo Select, Nintendo Switch Retrospective and Nostalgia Podcast. What do you?
Well, thank you for
having
having
me. What do you got
me.
to say for yourself?
Thank you for having me. Cool to see you guys continuing this podcast that I so humbly created back in its infancy with you, Tucker. It's cool to see you guys doing this, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future, how it grows, how you evolve, what other guests you get on. I saw your list. I saw what guests you're trying to get on here. You better make them all happen.
The ball's rolling.
We got some plans.
The Katamari is rolling along.
And we'll be gathering up every weirdo that you can imagine. And we're going to roll them into our life, into our podcast.
That's right.
Yeah, as you should.
Any closing thoughts, Charlie?
Give me give me
The answer was no.
Halo Infinite on Switch. Let me play some Halo multiplayer on the Switch. How about
That's
that?
that's very likely. I would
How
say.
about that? Yeah, I would love to play some Halo on Switch. I'll say that.
Why don't we close with one final thing, which is one game that is not a Nintendo system. Or what is your favorite / most hyped for game that you want to be on a Nintendo system, either that Switch or the next system?
This is a game that doesn't. Can it be a game that doesn't exist? Theoretically.
I guess so, but yeah, sure, why not?
Well, it kind of exists, but Charlie referenced it earlier. We already know we're getting Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I will bend over backwards, Activision, Treyarch, Black Ops 2 Remastered. Make it happen. Please, for the love of God.
Speaking my language.
Don't put
there,
blue
bud.
boxes in it. Don't put a battle pass in it. Just give me Black Ops 2 on Switch, too. You don't need to do anything. I'll be very happy.
Black Ops 2 is a good one. Black Ops 2 is my favorite, probably my favorite multiplayer shooter experience, period.
I agree.
That shit's crazy.
Oh, also Final Fantasy 14. But I think that I don't think we even have to worry about that.
Yeah,
I think that's going to happen.
Absolutely, that'll happen.
I mean, Halo Infinite, honestly, is what I really want. Because I've been ducking into that here and there and just, clicking some heads here and there. What about you, Tucker?
Well, I'm just looking at my favorite games of all time list, and basically all of them are on Switch that aren't developed or published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. And those
Wait a
games
minute.
are coming.
Wait a minute. Okay, this isn't third party, but Super Mario Galaxy 2. Come on! Where is
sure.
it?
Yeah.
That does need to happen.
There definitely are Nintendo games, and that's a whole other ports discussion in terms of what we still want to be ported. But yeah, that's definitely one.
Sorry,
but
I did not mean to interrupt you, but you reminded me.
But I think what I'm really looking forward to is polishing up the last few current / last gen games that have not come to Nintendo yet. Things like the Souls games that haven't come over. Mm-hmm. Those will be great on Switch when I think they do inevitably come. And more recent games like Elden Ring and Alan Wake 2, we know that Remedy wants to support Nintendo as well. And what I'm just really excited for is once we get to the point where the new FromSoft and Remedy games are coming to Switch, you can just play them on Nintendo systems. And it's not some weird, way later version like Elden Ring will be, or like Control was when it was late and cloud version. These games are great, and they will presumably be very, very good, if not a little bit hampered on the next system. And I want to see it happen. I want it to be a full thing. I'm tired of this waiting a long time, half-ass, here's a collection, here's a cloud version. No. Day and date. Make it happen. All you AAA third-party devs.
Tucker, have you played Sekiro?
I've not played Sekiro, no.
That is a phenomenal game.
I've heard nothing but good things. And
Bring it to Switch too.
Sekiro?
Make it happen.
Yeah, that could. The only one that couldn't is Demon's Souls and Bloodborne, because those are published by Sony, and
Hey, never say never.
they don't even want to do Bloodborne.
I'll say
Those
never.
games are
Helldivers
not
2?
coming. That we'll
That would
see.
be sick.
We'll see.
15
But,
15
they've
frame
changed a
per
lot in the past
second
couple years.
version of Bloodborne coming to Switch.
Yes. Please.
Make a 20 FPS version. Put it on
Hell
normal
no, that's
Switch.
not good. That's not even gonna hit that.
Thank you very much for joining me, you two, and everyone else who was watching. We have more episodes coming up soon with guests. We're going to try to make that a more consistent thing. This is our first one, and I'm very glad that it was Bo, because he's the one who planted the seed. He was the one who inseminated the Nintendo Select podcast.
I did. With you. With you.
With me,
That's the thing.
absolutely. We did it together, baby.
Yeah.
And on that
It was a
note,
crazy night.
thank you for watching. We will see you guys next week for more looking back at Nintendo Switch.